over the last 11 years of being an online entrepreneur, I've seen a lot. I've seen a lot of ups and downs. I've had launches that have done over $1 million, and I've had some launches that have done absolutely nothing. I've had webinars where 0 people have showed up. I've had webinars where I put the wrong time in the emails. I've had webinars where 1 person has showed up and I've closed them. I've seen all sorts of different things. I've gone through different pivots. I've gone through different things that we're selling. I've sold courses. I've sold online coaching programs. I've had an agency. There's so many different things that we have done over the last 11 years, and I've seen a lot. I've also risked a lot. I've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into launches, into ad spend. I have spent millions of dollars in expenses, hiring people, hiring coaches, mentors, and again, investing in ads, all sorts of stuff. And so when you experience so many things, you learn a lot. You also learn a lot about fear. And it's not about getting rid of fear. It's about moving forward even when the fear is present. And when you start to experience so many different extremes, highs, lows, wins, losses, it starts to become your new normal, which means you start to operate with a lot less fear. But there's been a lot of perspective shifts. There's been a lot of personal development. There's been a lot of me shifting the way I see things, the way I operate, the way I think, in order to become successful and to continue to grow. And so what I wanted to do was share a talk with you this week on the podcast that I did for our NGM Plus group. This is our mentorship, our coaching program, our group that we have there. There was a talk I did about fear that I thought would be incredibly powerful to share with you on today's episode. So all we're going to do is just play you the straight recording. You're going to listen to the exact same talk that I gave them about a month or 2 ago in our 2-day mastermind. So with that said, I'm going to start the talk and let me know what you think.
Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.
We're going to talk about mindset and fear release. You know, there's a lot of things that create fears that we have. A lot of it is based off of our past traumas, different things like that. And I'm not like a trauma expert by any means. And, like sometimes we have just really deep rooted things that we've gone through in our past, and everyone has a different past and different experience throughout this life. So what I want to do today is I'm just going to share some perspectives and realizations that I've adapted over the last couple of years. Now, the things that I'm going to share, like, these are not overnight fixes, meaning like you like understand the concept and all of a sudden like fear is gone the next day. Like, this is a practice. And even the things I'm going to share with you today, like, are still things that I'm practicing today, because fear is something that we're never going to get rid of. It's just a human experience. But we do have a choice of how long we are in that fear. And we also have a choice of, do we let that fear dictate and control our actions? And that's what I want to tackle is how do we move past the fear, or how do we move forward with the fear? One of the things that I've realized, and I've had a lot of great mentors, but Don Javier is someone that I work with. And his Don was Don Juan, who some of you may be familiar with. A lot of his teachings are pretty well known. But there's a couple sayings that he's always said to us and taught us. One of them has always been like, everything always is, always has been, and always will be okay. And so I always, like, anytime I get into a really fearful moment or a really hard time, like, that always runs through my head of like, you know what, Brandon, you're here right now in this moment, and you've gone through a lot of stuff in your past, but you ended up here and it's all okay. Like, it always was okay. Like, you've always just been fine. And, the fear has been a lot of the fears I've realized, and I'll talk more about this as we go through the slides, but a lot of the fears that I had were because I was told I should have those fears, and it was nothing more than that. And what I mean by that is, like, society tells us we shouldn't be in debt. And when I was in debt, it was like panic, and almost at the point of like panic attacks where like anytime my wife would talk about money, I would literally feel my heart just like, oof, like really pumping and almost like tight and stressful. I was probably on the verge of panic attacks, to be honest with you, like when I was at $40,000 in debt. And I just realized one day I just woke up and I realized like, the only reason why I have any of this stress or fear around being in debt is because society told me that I should be in fear and not have this. And I just said, fuck it one day. And I just said, I don't care. I said, there's people that are $200,000 in debt from student loans and no one bats an eye at that. They're not stressed. They're not worried about it. They're totally fine. And I have $40,000. Yeah, it's credit card debt with a little bit higher interest rate. But I'm totally fine. If people can come out of $100,000 in student loan debt, I can come out of $40,000 in credit card debt. And then I looked at my monthly payment. I was like, the monthly payment on 40,000 was like $900 a month. And I was like, as long as I make the minimum payment, that's fine. And I had enough revenue coming in at that point. And like, that's that's totally fine. And I realized like, oh my God, like it was such a weight off my shoulder. And I realized it was just this like self-created fear that I had been living in. And it was because of the world that I lived in. And so what I did is I started to make a shift of not letting the external control the internal, and the internal actually started to control my external, which was really, really powerful experience. So what I want to do is I just want to share a lot of those concepts with you guys. Again, this is not going to be something where you master overnight. There is a difference between knowledge and knowing. Knowledge is like, oh, I've heard that concept before. Knowing is I'm literally living that concept. It's the difference between reading a book on how to ride a bike and actually riding the bike. So what my goal is these might be concepts you've heard before. You've probably heard me talk about them before. My goal is to take it from, hopefully help you guys take it from knowledge to knowing. And that's the ultimate goal here. Okay. So let me check the chat real quick before we, 40K in debt feels so small now. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like, I'm so grateful for that experience, like being $40,000 in debt. And it taught me so much. It gave me huge ahas about how much the external can control your perspective and internal if you're not careful. Also, it just removed any fear. Like when I go into launches now and we spend $200,000 in ads, I have zero fear around that. Like there's no fear around it, because I always say like, worst case scenario, I always put all the ad spend on credit cards. I never use my own cash for it. And I was like, yeah, cool. I'll put 200 grand on a credit card. And like, if those launch totally bombs, like I'll just pay it off over time. It's like not a big deal. I have like zero concerns over that. So, and it's because of that experience. I was like, I can come out of anything, it gave me so much personal power and strength that experience did. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. So again, these are concepts I've used to overcome fear and get into the right mindset. For me, understanding what fear actually is was like the first step. Here's what my definition of fear is, and it may extend beyond this, but I think these three things will cover most of it. What fear is usually it's a representation of our relationship with the future and the present. So basically, it's also can stem from meanings that we give the future. So it's an event that we're afraid will happen, hasn't happened yet, but we're afraid of we're afraid of it happening. But really what happens is the fear's coming in because we give it some sort of meaning. So if we're afraid of the haters, we're afraid of the judgment. It hasn't happened yet, but we're afraid it's going to happen. What meaning are we giving that future? What meaning are we giving that future unwanted experience that we're so afraid of? And if we can give it a new meaning, and I'll show you some techniques and stuff that I've used over the years to give things new meanings, it can completely change the fear. So like, I think a pretty big one is fear of haters and judgment. And what I realized one day, when I realized I was giving it so much meaning, I was giving it a lot of meaning of self-worth is what I was doing. So I was afraid of the haters when I first got started. I wasn't really playing full out. Like a lot of these thought reversals and stuff that I do now, I would have never done 5 years ago because I was so fearful of the backlash that I would get from people. And the meaning is like, well, if no one accepts this content, this stand that I want to take, it means I have nothing worth selling. I have nothing worth talking about. Like I'm not worthy of people's attention. Like, and we need attention in the space in order to build a business. And then I just started to realize, like, well, I'm going to give it a new meaning if no one's paying attention. The new meaning was like, they're not ready for it, but it doesn't mean that this is not of value. It means that they can't see what I see because I could see it so clearly. And it doesn't mean I'm better than them or not. It just means I have in my opinion, the meaning I give is I have a fresher, new sort of perspective. And if I don't get the response that I want, I just need to figure out a new way to say it, but I'm not going to back down from this perspective because I think this is literally what's keeping people trapped. So I just started to give things new meanings. It really, really helped. The next one, and this one's big. This is a huge one that I'm still working on today. And I think we'll probably be working on this for our entire lives, is also attachment to the present, but also attachment to the, could be attachment to the future, but usually what it is an attachment to the present. So I'm going to dive into each one of these in a little more detail so it makes a little bit more sense. Let me minimize this real quick. Okay. So when it comes to fear and what fear actually is, in most cases, it's going to demonstrate the relationship that you have with the future and the present. And what I mean by this is, like, what I have found is that when we're in fear of a future event that hasn't happened, that feeling that we have is usually present anytime we think of the future, for the most part. Meaning that if I'm really worried about haters in my content because I'm afraid of getting judged, that demonstrates my relationship with the future. Because then I'm willing to bet, for those of you that have that feeling, and I'm only speaking from experience here, you also are very critical of like what you're going to wear to an event because you're afraid of being judged. You're probably really critical of like what you say in front of friends, or like you go to a group session and then a group party or something like that, hang out with friends. And then when you leave, you're constantly thinking, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I should have, because you're thinking about being judged. So these patterns come through in multiple scenarios. And so what I started to realize is that this is a demonstration of what my relationship to the future actually was. Because the same fear, the same thing would happen no matter what the situation was. In the context of here, yeah, it's going to happen in the form of putting content out and putting ourselves out. But that same fear, I'm willing to bet, is present in multiple situations across your whole life. And it may be one, it may be several, it may be more. But what it starts to do is just demonstrate what sort of relationship you have with the future, because it's going to replicate no matter what the scenario is. And that really is an opportunity. That's an awareness raising opportunity. It makes us aware of like, oh my God, I'm getting into this, or here's that pattern again, becoming aware of it. I believe that if we don't have awareness of what that relationship is, there's no way to move out of it. So if you're not aware of what sort of relationship you have with the future, it's almost impossible to move yourself out of that relationship with the future. So if you start to realize like, okay, I have this my relationship with the future is constantly like a fear of judge, no matter what scenario I'm going into, we now have a place to start and we can start to backpedal. And this is where like, certain things like exploring different traumas and healing and all that sort of stuff, which I'm not an expert in, but there's a lot of experts out there that can help you with that. That's where we can start to use those practices to heal those sort of traumas. And then those fears start to go away. What I've been able to do pretty successfully is become aware of that scenario, reframe it, give it a new meaning, and be able to move past it. Some of us will be able to do that. Some of us won't be able to do it. It just depends on how strong that is. And again, it doesn't happen overnight, but awareness is the very first thing. What I've also realized is that fear also really shows us our relationship with the present, which means that if you're in fear, you're not in the present moment. And being in the present moment, now here in this exact moment, not just physically, obviously, because that's where we always are physically, mentally, consciously, where are we? Are we constantly in the future, or are we in the present? Because if you're in fear, you're constantly in the future. But what I started to realize is if I just stay in the present moment, the fear actually started to go away because I wasn't so focused on what could happen. So again, when we get into fear, it really shows us what our relationship with the future and the present actually are. So when we aren't present, it's like, how do we feel about the future? It's gonna be very, 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 very obvious. So, obviously fear is nothing more than anxiety and worry about an unwanted future. And so another thing that I also started to do is just become very optimistic on what that future can hold. I started to also move beyond myself. So a lot of times I get into fear, or I go into a launch and I fear about money. The fear is all, for me, was always stemming from a very selfish place. It was all about me. I'm going to get judged. What are people going to think about me, my situation, my feelings, my whatever. And I started to go, this is what I'm trying to create, it goes beyond me. It's much more than me. It's the students. Like, none of you guys would be in the room right now if I let the fear control my decision-making. If I let my fear control what I did or what I said or what I posted, and just didn't speak from my heart and do what I thought was right. And so for me to be able to improve my relationship with the future is I made it beyond me. The future that I'm creating is like for the thousands and thousands of students. We have thousands of people that have gone through our programs. We have thousands and millions of views online. We have millions of dollars made from our teachings. That would not have happened if I was so focused on me and my fear and my worries and whatever. And so what I found was that it was so much easier to shift perspective or attach a new meaning or stay present when my focus was more on the people that I'm going to be impacting and lives I'm going to be changing than what could happen to my life. And I even got to a point where I was like, if my life gets completely destroyed by this, but I'm helping 1,000 people, I really don't give a fuck. Like, let's go for it. I knew it wasn't going to happen. Like, I know that if you're helping people, you're always going to get rewarded for that. If that's your pure true intention. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So meanings that we give the present and the future, when we find anxiety or worry of the future, it's usually because those events that you are afraid of happening, there's some sort of meaning you're attaching to it. And a lot of the times it happens without us knowing it. So awareness is first thing. We have to be aware that, what's happening, what's going on. The next one is, okay, what am I making this mean? What do I think this means about me? What do I think this means about my worth? What do I think this means about my content? Whatever it is, what meaning am I giving this? What interpretation am I giving this? And we can start to reframe and shift and change those interpretations or those meanings. The next thing is like, when we start to look at the meanings, what I have found in my circumstance or my situation is that a lot of the meanings that I would give things came from the world or the environment I grew up in. The world has done a great job of telling us who we should be. It's done a great job of telling us what we should have. It's done a great job of telling us what we shouldn't have, what is bad, what is good, what is right, what is wrong. It's done a very good job of that. And so what I realized is as I was going through a lot of fear or anxiety or worry about an unwanted future, I started to realize a lot of that stuff that I was experiencing was because the world told me that I should be feeling that. And the debt was a perfect example. The world told me I shouldn't be $40,000 in credit card debt. It is completely bad. It's unacceptable. And then that led to self-worth issues and all of this other stuff. And then, like I mentioned earlier, I woke up one day and I just said, I've been told that debt is bad. I've been told that I'm not going to be okay. And that's what really was the issue. I told myself that you're not going to be okay if you're in debt. And I remember just waking up one day and going like, I am okay. I am fine. People are in worse situations. And this is, if I would have started my business and took out $100,000 business loan, people wouldn't bat an eye. I wouldn't bat an eye. I would be in zero stress, zero worry. But the world has told me that being $40,000 in credit card debt is evil. It's bad. It's terrible. We shouldn't have it. And that is what was causing my anxiety. And so what I started to become more awake to and conscious of is all the things the world told me that I should have, shouldn't be, should be, shouldn't be, should, all the shoulds and shouldn'ts, the goods, the bads. And I just moved it all to the side. And I said, I am who I am. This is part of like remembering who you are. We have that exercise in the program. I started to remember who I was before the world told me who I was. I started to remember, and I also would just look out in the world and I would see how controlled everybody is by so many things.
controlled by, norms, society norms, controlled by what we've been told is right and wrong, controlled by narratives, news, media, like all of this stuff. And this actually led me to a really amazing path of critical thinking, being able to think for myself, started to question everything. And I think if you guys are in a lot of fear, I would just start to question everything in your life. Why is the fear here? Is that really true? Is that valid? Am I really going to be hurt if this happens? Am I really going to is my life going to be destroyed if this happens? And I just started to question everything. I started to realize wow, my mind has really created this box for me to live in. And I just questioned everything. Even my mentors, like Jim Thornton, amazing guy, amazing mentor. I started to question everything he told me. And I started to realize he doesn't know me. He doesn't know what I want, my desires. He's doing the best job he can as a mentor, but I can't just blindly trust my mentors. I have to start doing what is right for me, what feels good for me. Same thing with James. Even right now, James is hell bent on launch model. And he's like, I just think launch model is the best thing. And I don't really like this evergreen open enrollment thing. And I was like, that's fucking fine, but I don't want to be dependent on the launch model. That's not right for me. And I want to have this. And so, a lot of people might hear someone like James and say, oh, the launch model is exactly what you need. And then all of a sudden fear comes up. Why? Because fucking James Wedmore told us we should have launch models. Who does he know? He doesn't know you. He doesn't know your business model. He doesn't know what you want. He doesn't know your life. I have 3 kids. He doesn't. I don't want to be strapped to my computer for 3 months every time I launch, So you start to question everything. And once you start to question everything, you actually start to find what is right for you, who you are. And it's a very, very beautiful, eye-opening experience. Even Don Javier, who's been an amazing mentor for me, I question what he says and what he tells me. And I'm like, does this make sense to me? Am I blindly following him right now? Am I really making the best choice? And the thing with Don is he's very sneaky. He will literally lie to you to help you move past certain things. And so you never know if he's actually telling you the truth on certain things. And so again, he's teaching you how to stand up on your own 2 feet and make your own decisions for yourself. That experience was very, very powerful for me. And it led to a lot of freedom in my life where I'm like, I get to choose and create my own path and there is no right or wrong way. And again, I just can't express how powerful it was. A lot of the fears and stuff that I had were also tied to attachment. This could be too attached to money, relationships, home, having no haters, peace, and comfortability. So if you're too attached to things, you're not going to want to move past the fear. And what attachment means is you don't want to let go of something that you have. So, one of the fears could be if you're too attached to your money, you're not going to want to risk a lot of it when you go into a launch. And if you're not going to risk a lot of it, well, then your results aren't really going to be as high as they can be. If you're too attached to your house, are you really going to play full out and do everything that you need to do? Probably not. And this was attachment to everything. Even 2 years ago, my wife and I went through a really hard time. Actually, the last 6 years have been highs and really, really big highs and really big lows. And it's been a huge growth for us. But what I started to realize 2 years ago was I'm too attached to my current relationship with my wife, the dynamic that we had. And that changed because both of us I'm on a huge spiritual growth. She was going through some huge health issues, which led to huge personal development in her life, which means that, our identities are changing. We are changing. Some of our values are changing. And I was so attached to how we had been for the last 20 years that it was a very emotionally painful experience. And I had to rediscover who this new person was and vice versa. And I started to realize I was just so attached to how things were. And the second I let it all go, I just said, I surrender and I'm letting go of what was and embracing what could be or what will be. The emotional pain went away. There was no more fear. There was no more anxiety. Same thing with money. One of the biggest things I've always had is I've always had a lot of money issues. And part of that is because I grew up with parents who they weren't millionaires, but we were pretty well off, big house, nice vacations, all that stuff.
Then my dad risked it all to go into a business, and I left college to go work with him. The business went under. I had no college degree, I had nothing, and I was broke and I was embarrassed. And all my friends, like high paying jobs, buying houses, and I was like living with my in-laws. And so for me, like when I started to actually, like I had to work through those issues to actually become successful. And then once I did become successful and I had money, I started to realize I was playing really small because I didn't want to lose it. I was too attached to the money that I had gained. And so I didn't want to lose any of it. And so that manifested in not playing all out in the business, which kept me plateaued, which kept me stuck. And, you know, Jim Fortin's teaches a lot of the be, do, have model. It's like, if you want to have $1 million business, then you need to be the $1 million business owner now. So what decision does that $1 million business owner make? Do they not spend money on ads, or do they spend money on ads? Do they not invest in the program and hire the mentor, or do they do that? Do they get in victimhood, or they not get in victimhood? Do they take responsibility? Do they not take responsibility? And so for me, when I started to lose attachments, I started to become more of who I needed to be in order to hit the results that I wanted. So I'm also just convinced, after going through all of this, that if we're in emotional distress, more times than not, it's usually because there's some sort of attachment that we have that we're not aware of. And if we can learn to let go of that attachment, it's really powerful. Here's what I've also realized is that when we live in our attachments, it keeps us stuck into what we're attached to. So here's what I mean by this. If I have $100,000 in the bank and I'm attached to that money, I start to make decisions that keep me at $100,000 in the bank because I'm attached to it. So whatever you're attached to becomes what you have. And it's impossible to break past it if you remain, if you keep those attachments strong. So if you are great with the current present moment, then stay attached. That's fine. But nothing lasts forever. And you're going to go through some emotional pain at some point because, again, nothing lasts forever. But what I've realized is the biggest block that we have for success is we're so attached to what we currently have and we don't want to lose it, that guess what happens? We don't lose it, but we also don't gain what we want in the future because it keeps us stuck. So when we start to let go and lose the attachment, that's when we start to go to the next level. So a perfect example of this is like if I have my house and I don't want to risk losing my house, I'm going to make decisions that don't risk me losing the house, which means I don't actually get the next thing that I want. And what I've realized is that when we let the fear and attachment keep us stuck to the things that we have in our life, they actually cause us to make decisions that increase the chances that we won't keep those things. So if I want to keep my house and I'm making poor business decisions because I don't want to risk anything, what ends up starting to happen is my business plateaus or starts to decline, which means that there's a more higher chance of likelihood of me losing the house. Attachments will keep you stuck, but also could be the thing that pushes everything away as well. So here's some tools that I've used to overcome a lot of this stuff. Again, there is sometimes deep traumas and experiences that we have to work through and heal. So a lot of these, like a lot of the fears can be overcome with a lot of what I'm about to show you, but just disclaimer, sometimes it does need deeper work that I'm not qualified to do, but there are plenty of people, and there's probably people in this group that are qualified to do it. I know Rebecca, I don't know if she's here or not, but I know she does a lot of that work as well. So there's people even in this group that you guys can reach out to if you feel like you need more help. But again, if we're going to be on this path, we have to embrace and love personal development. And you have to understand that personal development is messy. It's not all, unicorns and rainbows. And you have to be open to all of it. Like even with the Culvers, like I've become really close with the Culvers over the last, I've always known them, and we've always run in the same circles, and I've seen them at events and stuff like that. And we were friends, but I've really become really, really close with them over the last 6 months, obviously working together on their messaging and them helping us with our stuff. And one of the things that Nicole and I have in common, I'm sure Dan does too, but I know Nicole says it all the time. She's like, I'm here for it all. Like, and so am I. Like, I have the same perspective. I'm here for it all. Like, bring it on. The good, the bad, the ugly, just fucking bring it on. Let's go. Like, let's do it. And the reason why I have that perspective is because I've gone through so many, what I call hard times or bad times or difficult times. And what I have gained on the other side has been unimaginable, has been everything that I needed to get to this point. And I have a deep, true, honest gratitude anytime I'm going through a really hard time. And, I'm sure I have more hard times ahead of me, and I'm sure they're going to be more difficult and painful than what I've gone through already. And I'm here for it. And again, it's like everything is earned. So you guys want to know how to become, courageous. You got to earn that. Small little steps, going through small little things, overcoming these small wins or overcoming these small losses. Like a lot of that stuff has to be earned, and people sometimes don't want to earn it. And for me, what I've realized is like personal development is just an earning of things. And in order to earn it, you got to work for it. And it's not easy and it's not comfortable. And so what I've learned is like, if I really want to have the things that I want to have and the business that I want, impact the people that I want, I'm going to have to earn the things that I don't have yet that will allow me to accomplish that. And that is truly how I live my life and my business. So again, awareness and reframing, we talked about this already, but becoming aware of what's going on. Why is the fear? When I have fear, I sit down and I go like, why is this happening? Where is this coming from? What's going on? And then seeing if I can reframe it in a different way. And for me, this works a lot of the time. There have been a couple times where it has not, and I had to get more help to like heal certain things. And, but I would say like 95, 99% of the time, for me at least, becoming aware and reframing is worked amazingly. The next thing is everything always has been and will be okay. This has been huge for me. Because a lot of times fear is an automatic reaction that we have to certain things. And so, when that automation happens, just calming my nervous system, taking deep breaths. There's a tool that Don Javier told us to go buy, which is an amazing tool. It's just like this little air whistle, and you just like 3 deep breaths into it when you start to feel anxiety and fear. And it's amazing how much it starts to calm you down. And when you come from a very calm state, you can see things more clear, which means you can see why it happened, what the trigger was. And you can I take myself to a place of everything will be okay. You're totally fine. Look where you're at now. Look what you've had to go through. You're going to go through more stuff and you're always going to be okay. And I believe that to my core. I'm at the point because I've lost so much of my attachments. Like if I was single and I lost all my money and lost my house and my car, like I really don't care. I'll go live on the street. I don't care. I'm not attached to it. I am still very attached to my family, and I wouldn't want to put my family through that. So I know that's where my attachment is. But again, I when I go through hard business decisions, that's what I look at is like, you'll be fine. Like, even if it all comes crumbling down, which it won't, but if it does, you're good. You're fine. And I'm like, cool. I accept that. If that is my fate, I accept it, and I will build from there, and it'll be a part of my amazing story. And that's literally how I look at things. Okay. This one's really, really important. You may not get what you want, but you always get what you need that will help you get what you want. This one's huge. So a lot of us, and this also goes, hand in hand with this one. You guys have to remember you asked for this. So don't be a victim about it. And this is like Brandon's tough love here. When you signed up to come down onto this planet and you start setting your goals and your visions of what you wanted, maybe it's for some of you, it's a $500,000 a year business. Maybe for some of you, it's $1 million. Maybe for some of you, it's an impact 1 million people, whatever it is, you asked for it. You guys, we all have goals. And we asked for it. We asked the universe or God or whatever you guys believe. It doesn't matter, but you asked for it. And what I think when most people ask for something, they just expect it to be given to them. And it has to be earned, which means that if I'm asking for $1 million business and the universe or God or whatever you guys believe says, you know what, Brandon, I'm going to give you that $1 million business. Let's go. And then the universe creates a path and a journey for me to get to the $1 million business. It's not going to be all rainbows and unicorns. Why? Because I don't have the skills. I don't have the mindset. I don't have the personal power. I don't have the tools that I need to build $1 million business. Because if I did, then I would already have the $1 million business. So what does the universe or God do? They give you the tools. How do they give you the tools? By setting up things in your path that allow you to grow, to become the person that can have the thing that you asked for. So don't be a victim about it. Take full responsibility for everything in your life. Everything that you have in your life is because of you, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. And so every time I go through a really hard time or a difficult time, like this last 6 months, it's like I intentionally slowed down the last 3 years. And I was like, look, business is good. I don't need to make more money than I'm already making. I want to spend more time with my family. It was also COVID, so everyone was home all the time. Like, what a great opportunity to really just like spend time with the family, you know? And I intentionally did not try to grow the business. And then it got to a point where I was like, I kind of want to grow the business. And then all of a sudden shit blew up in my business and things didn't work. And I was like, okay, thank you, universe, for this amazing opportunity and gift to get me back in the saddle. And then all of us, 6 months later, we had our best launch ever because I earned the tools that I needed to have in order to pull off that amazing launch and this evergreen process and all of that stuff. So for me, like when I went $40,000 in debt, I was holding on too tight to what I had. I didn't want to release. It's really stubborn. And when I let go of that attachment, I kind of eased down, became aware that this is only here because of society told me that I should have this. And I let go of it all. It's like, it was like a weight off my shoulders. There was also a time where it was a little bit after COVID, but I did one of these masterminds. It was like this. We did a mastermind with our mentorship crew back then, but we did it in person. And it was just like me, James, Catherine, and I think Jen Casey. And we didn't wear masks. And like someone had a pretty big issue with that and like tried to cancel us. And I remember sitting there, like getting tagged every day and like cancel them and don't pay attention to them. And they're killing people and blah, 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 blah. And I remember thinking like, if I give this no attention, it will go away. And that's what we did. We just like blocked the person, we turned it off, and I just moved on with my day because I didn't think I did anything wrong. And everything was fine. And I never heard from the person again. Nothing happened. There's no drop in revenue. There's no drop in followers, but I didn't give my personal power away to that person. Again, there was a time where I got ripped off at a car dealership. I'm so grateful for that moment because it sent me into researching and learning how to become a better negotiator, how the car dealerships work. And over the last like 5 years, I've saved over $100,000 in buying cars. Like when you look at the sticker price and what we started at to where we're at, I saved a lot of money on cars. I've also bought in a lot of cars over the last 5 years, but yeah, I say if I didn't have that experience, I'd just continue to get ripped off all the time. The next thing for me is gratitude for everything. I have gratitude for everything. I have gratitude for the hard times, the haters. I have grateful for the lack of results. I'm grateful for the failure. If I resist it, whatever you resist, you end up creating it. You don't want to go into debt. So you make all these bad decisions. You end up probably increasing your chances of going to debt. Your results are always about who you're being. And when you focus on the fear, you actually become the person who creates the fear. So again, if I have a fear of losing money on a launch, all the decisions I make are more focused on not losing money instead of gaining money or impacting people's lives. And when we start to make those decisions and take those actions, we actually increase the chances of the unwanted results happening in the first place. So for me, I live in full gratefulness as much as I can. Every night before I go to bed, I do not go to bed angry. I do not go to bed victim. I do not go to bed in low frequency emotions. I literally, like if I'm in a bad mood or I'm like mad at my wife about something and she's like already asleep, I will literally sit on the edge of my bed and I refuse to go to bed in anger or any negative emotions. And I just focus on gratitude. Like sometimes I'll even look at her and just be like, here's what I'm grateful for her, like what she's done and brought into my life. And then I go to bed and then I go to sleep. So sometimes it's hard to do that. And again, this is a practice. This is something that requires mastery. This is something that I will do for the rest of my life, but I'm grateful for every single thing. And there's there's two exercises we're going to do next that I want to bring you guys through that I think are really going to help you. One's going to be a meditation. And this one's just going to be a short little exercise. One of the ways it became very easy for me to be grateful for everything, even the haters, is I realized everyone
Everyone in this life is just as afraid as we are. Every single person is as afraid as you are. Sometimes we think, because we live, humans are just designed to live a very individualized perspective in life. We think that we're the only ones with certain fears and worries, and we're not. Every single person on this planet, including the hater, has a fear. They're insecure about something. They have a worry about something. Every single one of them. And when I start to realize, like, the person that comments really mean stuff on my videos is just as fearful of this life and in this life as I am, I actually find that I have compassion for them. I have compassion for what they're going through. I know what that feels like. And I can just either block and move on and delete their comment and move on and just like give that compassion and love to them and just be grateful that like someone even commented on my video. It becomes a much easier life to live and a much more enjoyable life. So we're going to run through one exercise and then we'll bring you guys through a meditation. I mean, it's the personal power meditation. We go through it almost every mastermind and it is really powerful. Some of you have probably gone through it before, but I want you to imagine, close your eyes, and I'm not going to look at the camera. So I'm not going to know who's closing their eyes or not, but I just want you guys to all close your eyes. This is an exercise that I did. If you've gone through Landmark, you probably remember this exercise. This is really powerful for me. Now, I want you to imagine we're in a room. So everyone on the Zoom call is in a room together physically. We're in a circle. So you have someone on your left and you have someone on your right. I want you to imagine that. And I want you to imagine the person on your right is just ripping into you. They're saying the most evil things that someone could say to you. You can imagine what those comments are or not. It's up to you, but just imagine someone next to you is like the biggest hater in the world, insulting you, saying really mean things to you, bullying you. Now imagine the person to the left is doing the same thing. Imagine the person to the left is saying really evil, mean things. They're bullying you. They're not stopping. They're completely relentless. So you have the person on the left and the person on the right saying all of these mean things to you. The person on the right and the person on the left is saying all these mean things to you. Now I want you to imagine you're the person on the right and what is their experience? And some of you guys will get this and some of you won't. So I'll explain it. When the person on the right and the person on the left is yelling and saying these incredibly mean things to you, bullying you, to the person to your side, person to your right, you're the person on the left saying the mean things to them. The person who is screaming all of these mean things to you is literally living an experience where you're saying mean things to them and the person on their right is saying the mean things to them. And when someone brought me through this exercise, I started to realize how individualized our experience of life actually is. And no one escapes this life without some sort of trauma, some sort of fear, some sort of anxiety. And what I started to realize is when I realized, oh my God, like I'm not the only person who's dealing with this sort of fear and this sort of anxiety and worry. Everyone on this planet is. I had such a deeper compassion for everyone else on this planet. I remember going through this exercise and walking through the mall and just staring at people going like, they're just as afraid as I am. We're all equal. We're all the same. No one's better. No one's worse. And I had such a deep, deep compassion for every single person, including the haters, because again, they may be that moment, the person on my right screaming at me, but they also have people screaming at them. And some people choose to take it out on others, and some people don't. And that's what they did. And it's not their fault. It's just, that's how they are dealing with what life has thrown at them. And so when I started to realize that, you know what, I'm not going to give up my dreams. I'm not going to give up the impact I want to make. I'm not going to give up any of that because of some other fear-ridden human. I'm not going to let them stop me. And from that moment, I just operated with a lot more compassion and gratefulness. So what I want to do is we're going to move into a meditation. And what I want you guys to do is just kind of close your eyes. I'm going to play it here in a second. And it's about 12 minutes. And then we're just going to do some shares and stuff, and we'll wrap up after that. So you guys can leave your cameras on, turn them off, up to you. It doesn't matter to me what you want to do. By the way, this meditation is in the program. So if you ever want to go back through it, you're more than welcome to do it as many times as you want. This meditation is about finding your personal power. Powerful people create powerful messages. Powerful people have powerful communication. By the end of this meditation, you will have far more personal power than when you began. Clear your mind. Clear your thoughts. Visualize something you want. Visualize something you've been trying to get but just haven't been able to achieve. Think about what is blocking you. Visualize the block or the barrier that you cannot get through. What is it? How does it feel? What does it look like? I want you to visualize how it's holding you back. Now I want you to visualize going through that barrier right now. Visualize physically going through it in your life right now. I want you to think about the fears you have about going through it. What concerns, what worries did you have going through that block or barrier? Feel the fears, feel the worry, feel the concerns. What emotions do you experience right now? What emotions do you experience when you face those fears, those worries, and those concerns? What is your emotional state? It's okay if it makes you emotional, teary-eyed, worried, scared. Those are all normal. But I want you to recognize this moment. I want you to recognize you in this moment. Who are you being? What are you embodying right now in this moment? Now, I want you to imagine what happens on the other side of this barrier. You made it through. Visualize it. You broke past that block and that barrier. And you're okay. Visualize it. I want you to think about the emotions that you experience. What emotions are you experiencing right now after breaking through this barrier and coming out on top on the other side? How do you feel? What strengths did you gain? We all gain strengths by overcoming things in our lives. You visually just broke past those barriers and you gained a strength. What strength did you just gain? What power do you now have that you didn't before the breakthrough? What power are you left with by overcoming that block and barrier? Feel the emotions of how it makes you feel. What emotions do you feel right now by gaining those strengths and gaining that power? What emotions do you feel by overcoming that block and barrier? Categorize those emotions, strengths, and power in your head. Visualize your brain opening up. A folder opens up and you categorize those strengths, power, and emotions into that folder, and you put them in your brain, in your body, so they stay there forever. Now imagine those strengths, power, and emotions seeping into your body. Feel the strengths and visualize them in the physical form. Now I want you to imagine those emotions, that power, that strength, staying in your body, but manifesting outside of your body as well. What does that strength look like? It could appear in the form of an animal, a symbol, a person, a statue, whatever you want. How do those strengths, powers, and emotions manifest themselves outside of your body? Categorize that in your head. Imagine your brain opening up, and that manifestation is planted in your brain. Feel the power you now have. Where does that power live within you? And how does it make you feel? Visualize it, feel it now. You feel the powerful emotions. you have a symbol that represents the strength you have, and you know where that power lives within your body and how it makes you feel. Sit in this state now. Now, let's return back to your current situation where you're facing that block or barrier. But you are returning with the emotion, strength, and power you just gained. Now, how do you feel about your current situation, block, or barrier? How do you feel about it now? What is possible now? Those strengths, power, and emotions were always there. You just found them, and you can now use them to tackle any barrier, any block, any situation. You are powerful. You have already done this. You have already overcome this block, barrier, or situation. You are the manufacturer of your emotions, strength, and power. Remember that. Now take a few deep breaths. On this last one, we're going to breathe in. We're going to hold it. We're going to breathe out and open our eyes. Hold it. Remember, you are powerful. And release. Slowly open your eyes. And remember, you are powerful.
Okay, so the meditation, Anna, to answer your question, is personal power meditation. It's in the NGM program, which you guys have access to, which would probably be in phase 2, but I think we left it out of phase 2. But you guys have access to it in the NGM program in section number 1.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.